Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to mismapasion, and game week number 2 of the Barclays WSL is officially in the books, so without any further ado, let's get right into the mix of things. We start things off once again with Chelsea, who made the trip to South London to take on Crystal Palace, and I won't spend too much time on this match because, long story short, Chelsea massacred the Eagles. This match, in all honesty, was like watching an eagle trying to get its way with a lion, pun intended, because it was such a massive disparity in quality between both teams. From the word go, Palace were fighting from the back foot as they were effectively pinned back into their own box for large portions of the game by the visitors. And though they did as best as they could to hang in there, whilst also trying to carve out a few goal-scoring opportunities that admittedly did come their ways at times, Aggie Beaver Jones would soon herald the arrival of the maelstrom of goals that Chelsea would soon score in the second half. At the beginning of the second 45, it was 1-0 to the Blues, and by the end, it would be Crystal Palace who would be feeling that way, as Lucy Bronze, Lauren James, Natalie Bjorn, Katarina Macario, and Gura Wrighton, who bagged a brace for herself, would all put their names down on the score sheet as Chelsea ran out 7-0, you read that right, 7-0 winners against the hapless South London outfit. In all honesty, the Eagles did next to nothing to cover themselves in glory, or at least some sort of admiration, I guess, here, as they essentially allowed Chelsea to dog walk them in this game, as the champions found it far too easy to breach opposition defense time and again. And in all honesty, it could have been double digits for Chelsea when all was said and done, and whilst the Blues continued their perfect start to the new campaign, it appears that a lot of defensive work needs to be taken into account by Crystal Palace lest they maintain their title of early relegation favourites. And speaking of perfect starts, Brighton and Hove Albion were seeking to do the same themselves on the back of their demolition of Everton in their first game of the new season, which will live long in the memory of any Seagulls fan, in no small part due to the sensational hat-trick scored by new signing Kiko Seike. The continuation of this perfect start would be threatened though by the hosts of the game, who were none other than Manchester City, who they themselves were looking to put the first notch on the W column off the back of the opening draw that they suffered at the hands of fellow title favourites Arsenal. The game itself was a rather intense affair that was more akin to a tennis match than a football match, such was the rate that both teams were conceding possession of the ball to one another. As one would expect though, Manchester City were dominating when it came to devising attacking chances and did threaten to go ahead on a few occasions, but Brighton did hold firm up until the very end of the first half, where regular goal scorer Bunny Shaw opened her account for the season to put the citizens one up going into the second half. And to their credit, Brighton put up a courageous fight against the hosts, especially in the second half, as they searched for a leveler that ultimately never came. And though they ended up on the losing side, the Seagulls' performance here against the former champions really set a marker for their season and a warning, in fact, for the rest of the WSL, especially when you consider just how well and how quickly the team has gelled in such a short space of time. It is still very early doors, but Brighton are looking like they're going to have quite the successful season, and hopefully I have not jinxed them by putting it out there. The halfway point of the game week saw Everton take on Manchester United, with the Toffees reeling from a double blow of not only losing emphatically to Brighton the previous week, but also losing one of their main players in Aurora Galley to the usual menacing suspect of an ACL injury. Whilst United, for their part, were looking to add another definitive victory in their first away match from home after dominating West Ham, before who we will touch on in the next game. It didn't take long for the deadlock to be broken, as following on from her dream debut at Old Trafford, Grace Clinton made it 2-2 as she scored to give the Red Devils the lead less than 5 minutes into the game. As outmatched as they were, Everton did admittedly put up a commendable effort against Manchester United, but for all their heart and for all their guts and courage, they could not find a leveler, as Manchester United maintained the 1-goal lead for themselves to make a perfect start to the season. And before we move on, just a quick word on firstly the somewhat shoddy officiating that went on in the game, with obviously the really insane tackle on Jade Riviere in the second half that only yielded a yellow card, which for me should have been a red, because Riviere is honestly lucky to have escaped that collision relatively unscathed, which leads the next point to touch on, as unfortunately for Everton, they have seen yet another player of theirs go down with supposedly what looked like an ACL injury. It's yet to be confirmed, but it pretty much is an ACL injury, for all being honest with each other here, as new signing Inma Gabaro suffering the harrowing injury, and I truly wish her the best of luck in what is hopefully a quick and successful recovery. Moving on now, and Liverpool made the trip to London to take on West Ham, and just like the Man U game, this game didn't take time to get a goal, as new signing Olivia Smith latched onto an intercepted ball from Roman Hogg, beat two defenders, and curled the ball past the keeper to announce her arrival in emphatic fashion. Spurred on by their early success, Liverpool continued to bear down on the Hammers and came close on a few occasions, but were ultimately unsuccessful in extending their lead, which they would soon come to regret later on in the game. And for West Ham, their approach to this game was much improved from their drubbing at the hands of Manchester United, as despite going down early in this game, they did well to keep themselves in the clash, and did well to ward off any potential punishment that Liverpool were looking to inflict, and their resolve did eventually pay dividends, as in the final 10 minutes of the game, as a floating cross was contested and won by Ueki, who pulled one back for her team to ultimately put the first point of the season for her side, with Liverpool yet again falling foul of the inability to really take the game to arguably inferior opposition, with the 4 points that the Reds have now dropped likely to come and haunt them later down the line, and best believe that tougher opposition will be taking notes of the early signs of weakness that Liverpool are showing, whilst the improved performances of West Ham can hopefully allow them to now properly kick on with their WSL campaign and possibly stave off any threats of potential relegation. Our penultimate encounter saw the only English team to win the Champions League in Arsenal take on Leicester City in yet another mirror match week, as the men's side also took on the Foxes. The encounter between the two teams was as lively as the crowd at the King Power Stadium, and both teams were really up for it. There was a healthy amount of respect shown by both teams early doors, but eventually Leicester would fire the first firm warning shot as Juta Rantala looked to put the team on her back once again, and she fired off a volley that ricocheted off the crossbar, which, if it had just dipped by an extra inch or so, then it would have been a guaranteed goal that debutant goalie Van Domsela would not have caught at all. The Gunners were saved blushes nevertheless, as the teams went in level in a goalless but enthralling first half. The intensity did not let up in the second half, particularly from the visitors, who soon opened up the scoring as a marvelous pressing from the Gunners' front line saw Alessia Russo intercept a really lethargic pass from CJ Pod to Lisa Kopp, which the Arsenal forward lobbed in the direction of the anticipating Frida Monum, who made no mistake whatsoever and slotted into the back of the empty net to grant the Gunners the lead. For the rest of the game, Arsenal largely dominated the Foxes, and save for in particular two great opportunities that Leicester could have easily capitalized on if it weren't for the heroics of Van Domselaar. I personally think that despite the presence of Van Domselaar, if Leicester had been more patient in their attacking approach, they likely would have leveled, if not completely turned things around against the Gunners. But their rather rushed approach did eventually prove to be their downfall, especially considering that they often left themselves open to the counter, which Arsenal obliged themselves, with the best chance coming to the feet of Rosa Kafaji, who unfortunately could not convert thanks to her effort being stopped by Kopp. In the end though, it would be Monum's strike that sealed the victory for the WSL former champions in Arsenal, who are starting to look more and more like proper and assured title contenders in arguably the first time under the tenureship of Jonas Edeval. And in the final match of the week, Tottenham made the trip up north to Birmingham to confront Aston Villa, who were reeling from a heartbreaking loss from champions Chelsea after what had been such a very good performance. And almost as if they had a fire lit up by that loss, Aston Villa came out the block swinging, with them taking an early lead which was ultimately flagged offside, which was met with little protest from the goal scorer Rachel Daly. The Villains maintained their positive start up until their momentum was halted by what I thought at least was a controversial penalty after Spence went down in the aftermath of a duel for the ball with Tomas. Suleiman would dispatch the goal to give the Lily Whites the lead, which they did ultimately struggle to maintain against a fired up Villa, who were now doubly motivated and were refusing to let their bad fortune affect their mentality. Villa manager DePaul would eventually make some key substitutions as he looked for the little extra oomph that was needed to pull his team over the line and get back into the game on the scoreboard, and soon enough, his faith was repaid by super sub Adriana Leon, who put the ball into the back of the net with some grade A finesse to solidify Villa's promise that had been shown so far in the game up to this point. And if you were a Villa fan, there was more fun to be had, as after having been initially denied, Rachel Daly would finally get her well-earned and deserved goal, and to complete the turnaround for the host, who seemingly looked to have sealed the 3 points for her team. Unfortunately though, it would not be meant to be, as late into the dying embers of extra time, a Hail Mary cross from Barchip would soon find the forehead of Beth England, who would head home to secure a point for the North Londoners. This match by far was the match of the week personally, as both teams really went for it, but Aston Villa were undeniably the better of the two sides and were really unlucky to have been undone so late in the game when they had performed so well in the preceding 95 minutes. The team from Birmingham will definitely not be happy with sharing the spoils with their efforts, but their performances against some tough opposition in the first 2 weeks of the new season is definitely encouraging to see, and hopefully they can continue with their good performances, which will yield more positive results sooner rather than later. And with the second match day of the Barclays Women's Super League now concluded, here are the current standings, with Chelsea and Manchester United being the only teams left with perfect starts this season, whilst Arsenal, Manchester City, and Tottenham Hotspur round up the chasing pack, especially thanks to the latter's last-minute heroics courtesy of Beth England, whilst over on the lower end of the table, Everton and Crystal Palace are the only teams left to record some numbers in the points column, which does not bode well for their survival prospects. But that is going to be it for today's video. Let me know in the comments what match stood out the most for you and who you think will continue to make a positive start to the WSL campaign. Leave your thoughts on all that and anything else you thought about in this game week. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and I will see you in the next one.